best thing from the event was a student came up to me today from Halifax County High School, senior. He was wondering what he was going to do with his career. His name's John. Came up to me and said, Mr. Corrigan, I just want to thank you for letting me come and be part of this week. I now know what I want to do with my life. I know what I want to do. So that was the whole point of inviting the students here. I wanted some of them to see what the opportunities were in the future, and so that they would pursue these type of degrees. I also want to give thanks to the Halifax County Industrial Development Authority for sponsoring this event from the beginning all the way to the end. It costs money. It costs a lot of our time as a staff to put this on. And Christy Johnson is the one who spent most of the time organizing and doing all the behind-the-scenes logistics. She wore herself out. She went above and beyond the call to put this event on, and I just want to give you this gift as a token of our appreciation for everything you've done. So a couple of gift cards in there for you. And now I'm going to turn the floor over to Matt.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug, and thank you, especially Christy. She really has worked very hard. And thank you all for being here tonight. We are excited about this event. This is the last piece of our event. I want to thank everyone for being here. Especially want to recognize our board members who are here. Thank you for coming. I know you all are very busy. We have our Chamber of Commerce President, Nancy Poole. Thank you. Pat Panchek from Industry Week Magazine, who was our speaker this afternoon, has stayed to hear our next speaker, our last speaker for the event. And especially am thankful to see the mayor of South Boston here, General Thaxton. It's good to see you. Thank you for being here. Our speaker for this evening first joined ABB in 1994 and has held several positions with increasing responsibility over his career. He started his ABB career as an electrical engineer in Ludvika, Sweden. I hope I said that right. He came to the United States in 2009 and was responsible for the Transformer Remanufacturing and Engineering Services Organization in North America until 2011. He has over 12 years of experience in the transformer business. He joined ABB South Boston in August of 2011 as Senior Vice President and General Manager of the South Boston, Virginia, and Crystal Springs, Mississippi transformer facilities. He is responsible for day-to-day management of the business as well as its strategic direction. He holds a degree in electrical engineering and an MBA. Peter Fiskerud.
I'm going to talk a little bit about ABB from a global perspective, and I'm going to keep that fairly brief. Then talk a little bit about what we're doing in North America and how we see the future in North America and what we've been doing over the last few years. And then, of course, get to what's nearest and dearest to my heart, which is the South Boston plant here in Virginia. So we're going to cover a little bit what we're doing in our plant here in South Boston, and also talk about the different processes we go through while we're building our transformers and what we see as important in building up the system to support our manufacturing. So again, if we kick off a little bit, if we can get this to work. Here we go. So if we talk a little bit about ABB in the global context, we were actually a merger between a Swiss and a Swedish company that happened in 1988. It was ASEA from Sweden, it was BBC from Switzerland. We're headquarters today in Zurich, Switzerland. We employ about 145,000 people across the globe. We have business in more than 100 countries today, and our turnover is approximately $40 billion. So our footprint across the globe is fairly big. So that takes me into what do we then do in North America? Well, the transition's been pretty big if you look at what has happened over the last 4 years. If you go back to 2009, I would say ABB was fairly underrepresented on the North American market, and especially on the U.S. market. We really didn't have the products that fitted the U.S. market, which was up to par with the standards on the U.S. market. And we realized that we need to do something on the U.S. market to make sure that we can get a lot more closer to our customers, bring products to the market that the customer really would like to buy on the U.S. market. So today, if we're going a few years forward into the 2012, we're actually 29,000 people. We were 15,000 people just 4 years back. So quite substantial investments that has been done on the U.S. market to take us where we are today. It also shows that the company really believes in this region. We actually set up a new strategy called In Region for Region, which really means that we want to drive the opportunity and the footprint to the business where it really is. So by doing that, we want to make sure we have the products, the footprint, to be close to our customers and be able to deliver on what the needs are and from the standards that's out on the product. So again, this is the footprint map looking at how ABB looked like around 2009. This is 2011. So just 2 years down the road, we acquired a company called Baldor, which makes electrical motors, probably one of the most premier motors manufacturers with their home focus on being U.S. ABB had a pretty strong global footprint when it came to motors, but it was all based on European standards, the ISE standards. We did well in Asia, we did well in Europe, we did well across the globe except the U.S. because we couldn't really provide a product that made sense to this market. So the acquisition of Baldor in 2011 really improved our portfolio from a U.S. market perspective. We also acquired a company called Ventix, which is more on the software side, driving the grid reliability, driving and controlling the network and the transmission grids in the U.S. and across the globe. So we added that, and we added a company up in Canada called Burmac, who was really focused on the service from the oil and gas perspective. So with the boom up in Calgary with the oil sands, we saw an opportunity to acquire a company then that could focus on that industry. This is 2012, 1 year later. We added another huge acquisition in the U.S., which was Thomas & Betts. So again, another footprint increase, another gap in our portfolio when it comes to the low voltage, the components, that side of the business that we could tag on. We also got access to a pretty good distribution system that Thomas & Betts had been building up in the U.S. over the years. So another great acquisition. So again, we moved from 15,000 people up to 29,000 people in just a few years. If we look at, so what do we do to stay ahead of the curve, right? What's really driving ABB to be the company today? And we spend a lot of money in innovation. Last year we spent $1.3 billion in R&D. And it's not just on the basic research side. We spend a lot of our money on how do we make manufacturing more efficient? How do we use the resources and the material better to be able to take down the environmental impact? We spend a lot of money also on operational health and safety, even from an R&D standpoint. How can we bring that into our products? How can we make sure that the products we build are safe, easy to manufacture, using the best type of material that's really out there? So again, without the money spent on our innovation and the R&D, there's always a big risk that somebody will catch up, right? And we want to continue to stay ahead of the curve and really be at the top of the game when it comes to the automation and the power industry. Going to small power transformers, South Boston. We actually have 2 lines or 3 lines today. We do distribution transformers, we do small power transformers, and now we do a little bit larger small power transformers in the expanded building you see that we like to call line 3. South Boston factory was founded in 1968 by Westinghouse, acquired by ABB in 1990. We have today about 450 people just north of that working with us at our facility. And we have manufactured about 100,000 plus transformers so far year to date from 1968. What's interesting with our business is that when you say we've manufactured 100,000 transformers, we only do 1.6 unit per designs. So if you start doing that math, you can see the engineering that goes into each and every one of these transformers are pretty substantial. And we need to continue to keep a very high level of our engineering talent to make sure that we can stay flexible, both in our manufacturing, but also in our engineering and design of the unit. I said we had the line 3. That expansion was done in 2008. It wouldn't have been there if it hadn't been for the local support we got to put that line in place. We got excellent support from the Halifax County IDA, from the Tobacco Commission, and also from the state agencies of Virginia. There would be no way that that place would have been here in South Boston without that kind of support. It also means that we have now, after 2008, a state-of-the-art manufacturing plant in South Boston, Virginia, when it comes to manufacturing transformers. We have the latest technology from a winding perspective. We have the latest technology from a drying perspective. And we also have a lot of the flow that's been built up in that plant is actually extremely good from manufacturing transformers. So we're in very good shape. And we're actually hoping to use that now here going further to actually expand to do what we in ABB would call medium power transformers then. So hopefully in the fairly near future, we will also see us expanding to a little bit larger units in that building. So we're having good hopes about the future of South Boston. It's also a good location from a university cluster perspective. I mean, if you look at this area, you have a lot of good universities from an engineering talent perspective, which also means the pool is out there. I think what we have to realize, though, or what I realized in 2009, coming out of Sweden, ABB is a household name, right? Everybody knows ABB. If you ask anybody in the queue to the grocery store, they could tell you what ABB is doing and what type of products they have. So I came in 2009 into the U.S., really expected about the same thing, that the knowledge about our company would be great. And I started flying around the country. And I asked every single one I sat next to on the plane, you heard about ABB? It took me 3 years and a number of gold points to get there. But it was really an eye-opener for me, realizing that we still have a lot of work to do in the U.S. to become that household name. And I think the acquisitions we've been putting on now is taking us closer to becoming that type of company. It also drives another thing with being a household name. In Sweden, we were top 3 on the universities every single year when you asked them, what company do you want to go and work for? Every single year, we ended up in the top 3. From the business students, from the engineering students, from the finance students, from the material students, from the doctorates. I mean, we had it excellent from that regard, right? And I think that's the reason why we need to work on our brand image also in the U.S., generate that kind of buzz about our companies, and we will start to attract the type of talent we would really like to have in our company. Again, so what do we do in our factory when we talk about what we like to call the advanced manufacturing? We like to start with the customer. In a big company like ABB, it's very easy to become internally focused. We need to stay away from becoming that internally focused company. We need to make sure that we put the customers in the first room, understand their needs, understand their requirements. So again, we're their number one choice when it comes to buy transformers. So we spend a lot of time in collecting what we call the voice of the customers through different surveys when they walk through our factories, through a system called Net Promoter Scores, which is basically one simple question. How likely is it that you would recommend ABB to one of your colleagues? And you give them an option from 0 up to 10, and that's the only question they need to answer. We figured if people are recommending us on the market with that simple question, we're doing the right things for the customers, and they would like to do business with us. And we start to work very hard with that feedback that we're getting in from those surveys. We break them down in our quality management system. We break them into our measurements. We break them into our continuous improvements team. So we make sure that at the top of the agenda is what our customers are telling me we're not doing that great in. If we can keep improving those sides, we will have more and more people coming back to us and do business with us on the transformer side. Again, we also use a lot of tools, processes, all the great OpEx tools you heard about out there to measure, to follow up, to set the targets. And we also set short-term targets. If we have a short-term issue that needs to get fixed now, well, we also do the long-term targets. Where do we want to have our company from a manufacturing standpoint, from a quality standpoint, further down the line? And we spend a lot of time setting those targets and making sure that we're tracking, following, and seeing that we're progressing in the right direction. We talk about front-end system. This is where, again, we set the pace for what we expect for the product in the end. If we don't do the front end correct, if we don't understand the customer needs, if we don't understand the specifications on this market, if we don't understand what the requirements are, we're never going to hit our mark, right? So once we understand that and can break it down into our tools, into our processes, and preferably automate much of these processes so we also get the people not being administrators, but rather can flush that order through and making sure we spend, again, more time with our customers, more time on the things that really matters at the end of the day. And if we can do that, again, we give the project a very good start coming into our factory, and it gives us an opportunity to focus on the things that matters. If we then go into engineering, of course, the development of the engineering tools have just been fantastic over the last few years. Things we had no clue what's going on in our transformers today, we today know, both good and bad, because sometimes we actually find things we really don't want to have in there, right? But at least we find them, and we find them before we build them, we find them before we ship them. And this gives us the tools to optimize our flow in the shop. It gives us the tools to optimize the transformers, build them for the manufacturability so they get smoothly through the shop, but also the utilization of the resources, utilization of the materials. Finally, we can find ways to utilize new materials, and we can really test it in a simulation. There was no way you could do that in the past. In the past, it could have taken you 10, 15 years to figure out that you really had a problem with that type of material or that type of design. Today, we can run it through a simulation, and it will give us an answer straight away whether or not we did the right thing. So it definitely gives us a big, big part of an advantage of being able to do that. If we then look at the material, the utilization of material, this is another area where the development have been quite rapid. And staying close to our suppliers, understanding their capabilities, gives us ways of buying in a different pattern, keeping down our inventories, but at the same time take advantage of the new materials that are out there. That being said, though, if you come into the South Boston transformer manufacturing, we're the highest vertically integrated transformer plant ABB has. We bring in paper, we bring in steel, we bring in copper, and out comes the transformers. It's all about the raw material coming in through. And we actually have one of the great inventors to one of our great things here, Mr. Ricketts here today, on the Durabil coating. That's actually a unique product we're using in South Boston and up in Bland, Virginia. And it's actually been inherited to his daughter, Patricia, who now holds the knowledge of our technology when it comes to the Durabil coating. It's a unique process. It's a fantastic process. And I think we can now continue to drive that through the global. We're having a little bit of a hard time getting our European friends to understand the benefits. We've been working on that for the last 20 years, or even more, I think. Eventually, they're going to understand how good this thing is, though. So we'll get there. But again, the vertical integration also makes us fairly quick from turning around the unit very quickly because we are in full control over our supply chain and our manufacturing chain. So very positive development in South Boston. Going into our automation and the support from a manufacturing standpoint, I talked about our Line 3. In Line 3, we now have semi-automated winding machines. That has not only given us a higher productivity, but it has also given us the opportunity from a training perspective. It used to take us 7 years to train a winder, to be fully capable of doing everything we're doing in that factory. With the support from the semi-automated winding machine, we can now do the same job in 3 years. You can have a fully trained winder in 3 years. Makes a huge difference for us. And it gives us the opportunity to continue to invest in our people. We want to see them getting more and more of an electrical background, more and more of an automation background, and bring them into our factory so they can support us in continuing to automate some of our production. Down in Crystal Springs, our sister factory, they actually supply some of the cores up here. They have an automatic core stacker. So basically, they have a cutting line of core steel that comes in, gets cut up, gets stacked up, gets stood up to look like a transformer core. They bolt it back together, and they ship it up here to South Boston. Another pretty neat invention that gives us an advantage on the market instead of having to actually hand stack that core. And I think what automation has brought to the factories is not only productivity, but a much better working environment for our people. Being able to take away some of those monotonous jobs and replace them with a robot, replace them with a machine that can actually help you do that. And again, spend the valuable time of our employees on things that the machines really can't do. And I think we're coming there more and more. And I think we'll continue to see quite big investments when it comes to automating some of the things we're doing in the factory. Testing. So how do we prove to our customers at the end of the day that what they specified is actually what they're getting while we bring them into the test room? Again, in South Boston, in the new plant, we have very advanced testing. We can do up to 1600 kV testing on the power transformers. And really what we're simulating is what you see on this picture. When you have the lightning coming on in the evening, we want to make sure that that transformer can withstand that lightning. And that's really what we're doing again in our test room. We're able to simulate lightning, put it onto the transformer, making sure it survives whatever surge that comes through the skies. We also do a lot of routine tests, more regular tests. It's not always that cool that's on the picture back there, but it's a great room to have, and I think we do a good job from the testing and verifying our transformers before it's shipped over to our customers. Last part that doesn't sound too cool, right, is transportation. But it goes actually a lot of things into our transportation, depending on whether we're going to ship it by rail, whether we're going to ship it by ship, whether we're going to ship it by truck. It actually depends on what type of routing we're choosing, how we would design our transformers. Because the stresses that transformer will feel on the way to get to the customer is completely different. So we need to look at that. The other cool thing is we now have impact recorders on every transformer with a GPS tracker on it. So we can tell you exactly where that transformer is on the road. We know what kind of stresses it's been undergoing on the way to the customers, and we can follow it and see it where it ends up, right? So if the customer calls us and say, hey, we have a stop at the border, we can actually pick up the computer, take a look, and is it there or not, right? So it's a pretty neat thing, and I think that kind of development will continue to grow as well. We will be able to do more and more, and hopefully in the future here we'll be able to interact directly with our customer service reps being out on the site, our field service. You bring up your phone, you have the face-to-face conversation, and you can figure out what's going on with the transformer. So that's part of the installation. making sure it's an ease of installation of the products we have. Last but not least then, if you look at all the pictures we've been showing here today, or how we have built up our system in South Boston, every single company out there could copy that. It's not that hard. You can build up that system. You can buy that equipment. You can set up that testing room. The one thing they cannot copy is our people. And if we don't take very good care of our people, making sure we're attracting the type of talent we need to get into that facility and into our company, we will lose. There's only one way to stay ahead of the curve, and that's taking good care of your customer, providing them with a career path that's interesting and that can bring them self-fulfillment in their career plans and in the way they want to go. And if we can't do that, we have a big, big problem. Again, I think for me coming into this area was pretty fantastic to see what's going on in this community. It's bustling with activity, right? We have a lot of cool technology going on in the South Boston area. And we're actually attracting people to this area thanks to a lot of those things going on. I think we can continue to strengthen our relationship with the universities. We have a lot of good universities spread across, not too far away from South Boston. We as a company needs to do a better job in making sure that we attract those people, becoming a household name, becoming the company you really want to go work for. And I think once we're in front of these students and in front of these people and letting them know the type of career you can have if you go into engineering, if you go into finance, if you go into business, when people start to realize what type of jobs you have within the manufacturing industry today, I think it's an eye-opener for a lot of them. And I think you can actually pry away a few of them wanting to go into media, other things that just sounds cooler than electrical engineering, right? And we see a lot of that actually happening. And that's part of why it's so good for us to come out and talk about what we're doing. Because once people see the breadth we have in our portfolio and the type of jobs, I think it sparks an interest in people wanting to come and work for us, right? That's it. Thank you very much.